Hey y'all, and welcome to His Kitchen. I'm your host, Wheaton Webb. Today we'll be making rosemary lemon chicken with orzo and wilted spinach. So let's get started. First thing we need to do is preheat the oven to 350 degrees. While the oven's preheating, we need to cut this lemon in half and then slice it thinly, about this big. You're going to want about 5 slices of lemon because we're going to put them on top of the chicken while it bakes. When you're done cutting the lemon, set it aside and prepare your chicken. I like to wash my chicken before cooking it. Not everybody does. Some people say it makes it tough, but I always like to do it. Just it helps clean it up a little bit. Alright, and one thing you're going to want to make sure you do when you're washing your chicken is to make sure the water's on cold. If it's on hot, it can defrost your chicken too fast. Or when you're rinsing your chicken, you want to make sure that you're using cold water to keep the external temperature under 40 degrees. Otherwise, bacteria will start to grow. When your chicken is rinsed, you're going to want to try to trim off as much of the fat as possible. The fat on the chicken is any of this white stuff you see right here on the edges, or along here. And on the underside of the chicken, if you see any of these red spots, you should also try to cut that out just because it doesn't taste as good. Alright, now that we've trimmed the fat off of the chicken, we're going to cover the bottom of this pan in olive oil and get to the fun stuff. Alright. We're now ready to grease the bottom of the pan with olive oil. A lot of people use butter for this, but I prefer olive oil because it's got healthier fats in it for you. If it's a solid at room temperature, odds are good that it's not a fat that you want to be putting in your body. So just use your hands to sort of move the olive oil around the bottom of the pan, and that'll give the chicken a nice color on the bottom. When that's done, go ahead and put your chicken back in the pan. And drizzle a little bit of olive oil over the top of it. And if you look on the back of the label, it'll say there's a lot of fat in there, but like I said earlier, it's the good kinds of fat that your body needs. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is use this lemon pepper grinder from Trader Joe's. This stuff is great. It has all that you need to make a good lemon pepper chicken in it, and all you got to do is just grind it up like this until you get enough in the cap and the bottom. And enough really is whatever you want. For me, I like a nice lemony flavor, so I use quite a bit of it. Typically, it's just enough to cover the top of the chicken. Alright, when you're done grinding, if you're using the Trader Joe's grinder, just lift the little lid off and you have all of the seasoning ready to go. Now just sprinkle it over the chicken. Get a pretty nice coating on there, not too much, not too little, just sort of along the lines of what you like. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is rinse the rosemary out so that we can lay it on top of the chicken as it cooks. Alright, you're going to want to take one sprig and lay it on each piece of chicken at the time when it's cooking. Okay, the next thing we're going to do after we put the rosemary on the chicken is to put the slices on top of that. You're going to want about 2 slices per piece. Okay, once you've applied all of your lemon on top of the chicken, you're going to use some aluminum foil to cover the pan. The aluminum foil is good for keeping the chicken moist, otherwise it'll really get dried out while it's in the oven. And dried chicken is really sort of a letdown. It doesn't have to be a whole lot, and it doesn't have to be really tightly covering it, just enough to sort of bend around the edges a little bit. Alright, now it's ready to go into the oven. You're going to want to bake this for about 45 minutes if your chicken was completely defrosted. If it needed to defrost a little bit more, which is fine, you need to add about 20 minutes or so to account for that. Now that your chicken is finished baking, make sure you get some oven mitts to take it out because the pan's going to be really hot. Set it up here on the stove because it's a heat-resistant surface. Make sure to turn off the oven and you're good to go. Alright, let's check out the finished product. Okay, to check and make sure if it's done all the way, you're going to want to cut into the middle of the largest chicken breast and just get a little glimpse in there. And if you see that it's all white like this one is, you're good to go. If you see any pink or translucence, you're going to want to put it back in for a couple more minutes. And if you have to check it again, use another chicken breast because this part right here will cook really quickly once you put it back in. So for the next part of the meal, we're going to be making some orzo pasta with wilted spinach. It sounds complicated, but it's actually really easy. To get started, you just need to fill your pot about 1/4 of the way up with some water. Okay, when you've got that done, make sure, especially if you're using an electric stovetop like this one, that there's no water on the bottom of the pan, otherwise, or on the pot, because otherwise it will sizzle when you put it on there, and it'll cause it to stain. And because we're boiling water, you're going to want to put it on high just to get that rolling as quick as you can. When you have a good rolling boil on your water here, you're going to want to take about 1 pound of orzo pasta and just dump it in. It's really simple. Be careful though not to let the water splash because it will be hot. That's a lot of pasta for a little bit of water, so you're going to want to make sure you stir it around to make sure that it's evenly distributed, you don't have piles anywhere. When you're cooking pasta, you want to make sure that you just stir it occasionally, just to make sure that it's evenly distributed throughout the pot. Alright, your orzo will be done after about 7 minutes of boiling, so you're just going to want to take that off the burner, especially if you're using an electric oven, because it'll actually, or an electric stove, because it'll actually keep cooking after you take it off, because the surface stays hot. It's important to monitor your orzo really closely, because if you let it cook too long, it'll turn to mushy and it'll get really sticky, and that's just no fun. Alright, once you're done with your orzo, you're going to want to take a rag, grab it by the pot handle like this, and we're going to go drain it at the sink. And it's important to remember to use a rag, because if you're using a pot with metal handles like this, they can get really hot. The best way to do this if you don't have a colander is to use a fork, and put it right at the edge of the pot, and drain off the water. Now, it is a little tricky and you'll lose some pasta, but don't worry about it because you made plenty. In our case, because we made a whole lot of pasta, not a whole lot of water to drain out. What you are going to want to do though is let this sit out for a little while, stirring occasionally, and that'll let all the water that's still in there sort of evaporate off of the pasta, and that'll give you a nice clean dry pasta. Next we need to wilt the spinach. To start, you're going to want to rinse it off under some cold water. And this helps you get enough water in there to help the spinach wilt right without actually burning. And you don't want like loose water, you just want water on the leaves. So pour out whatever remaining water is in there, and if you look, you'll see that there's enough water left on the leaves to actually to make it wilt when you go to cook it. The final thing we have to do is wilt our spinach. For this, you're going to want to have your pot, no water. You're going to want to turn it low. It doesn't need to be very hot. Then, just pour some spinach in there. It doesn't have to be the whole bag, and this is really just one of those things that sort of depends on your taste. For me, I like to get about a fistful of spinach, so about that much. Just throw it in there, and kind of keep it moving. You don't have to stir it constantly, but you also don't want it to just sort of be sitting there for long periods of time. Alright, you can tell when your spinach is getting done when it starts to look a little bit like this right here. You want it to be starting to shrivel up just a little bit, and really just starting to lose a lot of its structure. So, here's our wilted spinach. What we're going to want to do now is add back in the orzo. some cases, if it's cooled off a little bit, it'll have firmed up, but it's okay because this hot pot will just bring it back to its normal sort of consistency. Alright, and this is about what it should look like. What you're going to want to do now is add in a little bit of olive oil, just to get some of those good fats in there. Also, it adds a nice flavor with the pasta. So just a little bit, maybe about a half a tablespoon to a tablespoon, really. It's not that precise. And stir that in. That'll also help your orzo. It'll help a little bit with the clumping, because it'll prevent the little pieces from sticking together. Alright, the final thing you're going to want to do is season it. When I season pasta, I like to use 21 Seasoned Salute from Trader Joe's. It's awesome. It has a mix of some of your basic spices, and it means that you don't have to go out and buy a whole spice cabinet full of stuff. So it's a really easy thing to use. What you're going to want to do now is just sort of sprinkle a couple dashes of this. It goes pretty far, so about that much if you want to take a look in there. And then you just stir it up, make sure that it's nice and evenly distributed. Don't want any spots with particularly strong flavor. That would overpower the chicken. Alright, and now we're going to plate it. Now we're going to plate the food. Basically, it just means to put it on the plate nicely. So we're going to just want to take 1 scoop of orzo, put it right in the middle, try and make a nice little pile out of it, and take a little bit more. Just make a nice little serving, and then take a chicken breast. Excuse me. Gotta get a fork. Get a chicken breast and place it right on top, and you have yourself a nice little meal. So now that we've finished making our orzo and chicken, we'll have some friends to eat it with. Thanks for watching with us, folks. Tune in for the next episode where we will be making some desserts, molten chocolate cake, as well as twice dipped strawberries.